Hey, it's Friday. Let's have a cocktail with Anna Glowinsky.
So I'm joined now by Jocelyn Stevenson. She's written a book called The Waterubas. It's a brand new word, so forgive me for getting it wrong. But she is no stranger to being behind the scenes and creating for children. Jocelyn, thank you for joining us today. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, Anna. Thanks.
Yeah,
thanks for having me.
Really great to have you. I've got a million questions for you. I'm going to try and keep it quite lighthearted, but really want to start off with getting to know a little bit about your background working in children's entertainment. Where did you start out, and what are some of the productions that you've worked with?
Okay, I started out many decades ago on Sesame Street.
Yeah.
That was my... Yes, that was my first experience, and it was amazing, you know. And then how you could use, and what I loved about it was how you could use entertainment to educate kids. I loved Sesame Street, and also
so did I.
Yes. And also because it was funny and it involved the Muppets, parents would watch with kids, and which gives it, you know, an extra boost for the potential for learning. But when I was on Sesame Street, that's when I met Jim Henson. And when I met Jim Henson, then, I started to work with the Henson Company. And the first big thing I did with them was I was on the creative team for Fraggle Rock.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one of the best experiences ever. So I did over the years, I've done a number of things with the Henson Company, a thing called Mop-A-Top Shop, The Ghost of Fafner Hall, the Tale of the Bunny Picnic, The Animal Show with Stinky and Jake. I worked for many years with them, but then I also worked on a program called The Magic School Bus, which was an animated show that I did for PBS in the States. And I don't, you know, I'm too old to remember all the stuff I've done now. Sorry.
Well, I mean, it's an awful lot. What was your role in working with these companies? What were you actually doing?
Sorry, say that again.
What was your actual role on working on these productions?
Okay, when I started as at Sesame Street, I started as a secretary. And then I was working on I was working on the Sesame Street. Well, mostly because before that I graduated from Stanford in California, and I was helped to start a daycare center in Menlo Park, California, when I did that, that's when I first saw Sesame. It was the early days of Sesame Street, and I thought, when I saw it, I thought, get me to New York. These people are doing for 9 million kids what we're trying to do here for 30. It was so exciting. And so when I went to New York, a young thing, went into the offices of the Children's Television Workshop. And I'm telling you, I handed over what I considered my CV to tell them what I'd done, which was nothing. As I was walking away, I could practically hear them ripping it up to file it, circular file, as we said. So it actually turned out that I knew somebody within the workshop she was looking for somebody, to help at being a secretary. And I said, I'll empty waste paper baskets. I just want to get in. This is a really exciting place to be. And that's where I started. But then I was the editor of the Sesame Street magazine. I ended up writing a few episodes of the show. And then when I was working for the Henson Company, I worked in their publishing department to begin with. And then when Jim was putting together, the team for Fraggle Rock, I was always one of the people in the organization that really wanted to work on things they were doing for kids, because they'd been doing the Muppet Show, which is for the family. Mm-hmm. And when they realized that the Muppet Show was everywhere on the planet, really, it was huge. Jim realized we could do a kids show that could be international. We could produce a bit of it that is just a Muppet bit, so that's easy to dub. Different countries could use the same bit, And then, am I making sense?
Yeah.
And there would be a separate bit that looked local. So a local broadcaster could produce a show that looked much more expensive than anybody could afford, because it had all this Muppet stuff in the middle, and but it had their own logo. Like here it was in America and Canada, it was Doc who worked and had his own workshop. Here it was the lighthouse keeper, and in France it was a baker, so it was in a bakery. These were the bits that connected up the Fraggly bits, and in every one of those places there was that hole in the wall, and through that hole you could get into Fraggle Rock. And so I've leaped ahead because I just told you what our concept was. But when Jim was putting it together, he said, I want, pulled together a team of about 5 of us and said, I really want you to create a show for kids that'll help stop war. We thought, okay, Jim. And one of the people, Jerry Jewell, who had been the head writer on The Muppet Show, Jerry said, would you want that by Thursday, Jim? So we started to develop it, and we had this luxury of time. We had much more time than you normally get to develop a show. So I then went from being a writer, then to being, a co-creator, and then to being, started to produce things. And so that's sort of was my trajectory. And, does that answer your question? And most in head writing, I was doing a lot of head writing and that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the reason that I asked was to sort of get a flavour for your experiences in the past that brought you to where you are now, which is creating this storybook for children. And I guess I was curious as to know how much you were sort of onlooking at these previous shows that you've been working on, or actually hands-on, and how you were able to take what you'd learned from those into, the good stuff, but also the things that perhaps you do not want to repeat, and, create your own story, the Waterubas.
Yes, it was very hands-on. So and the Waterubas, basically what happened is I also had a job here in the UK. We worked with Mind Candy, which is the company that produced the Moshi Monsters, which was a gigantic online game, really, for kids under age 13. It was great. And I'd never worked in that digital landscape before. And I was also asked to come on board to help them create a film. And I'd never done a feature-length film before. So it was like, okay, I've ticked off the last 2 things on my list of things in children's media that I wanted to do. And I've always called the water, and I thought, okay, now it's time. I want to bring together all the people I've worked with, that I've really worked with, all that I've learned, like you say, and do my own project. So I wanted to do a big idea, because how much bigger than Let's Stop War can you get? Very heavily influenced by my time with Jim Henson and the Henson Company. Also with Magic School Bus, which was all about science. And so there was a teacher, Ms. Frizzle, and she would take her kids off on field trips. But instead of going to the planetarium, they'd end up going into outer space. That was the sort of idea for that. I wanted to do my own big idea, and I started to work on it, and I started to research. I decided it was going to be water, because that's pretty big. And it's been interesting I really have been working on it for 10 years. Over the last 10 years, how it's changed, how it's becoming more and more a crisis situation really on the planet. So I researched and then started to create my story world and my characters. And I got to a point where I realized that I'd learned a lot about water, because I didn't want anyone to think, you never want to mislead kids, but you have to sort of know how far you can push the science to keep the story going, right? And so I came up with my story world and my characters, and I knew why I'd made all the decisions, but I'm a collaborator. And so I decided to bring together a small group of people I'd worked with on the Magic School Bus, friends, family, and sit around a table in Bath because that was appropriate for the water theme for a creative summit. And That's what happened. And that was in February 2020. Okay. So it was going to be television because that's what I knew. It was going to be, we in this group of us, it was like, I felt like I put this big ball of clay in the middle of the table as if there was a potter's wheel there, right? That was my image because there it was. I brought in the clay and then everybody leaned in. There was one person I brought over from Canada who knows how to run a room like that, to get everybody to work together. We're all in the service of the best idea. And so he sort of pumped the potter's wheel. People leaned in. They took bits off of the clay. They poured water on it. And I'm telling you, Anna, it turned into something I never, ever could have imagined on my own. And so that was very exciting. But February 2020, okay, so we went off to write scripts. We designed it to be 3 series. 3 series over 10 episodes each on a streamer, so like Netflix or Apple. And so we were writing scripts and we sort of outlined the whole thing, and then pandemic. And I was working on the design too, because the Waterubas are characters they're made of water. We discover them when Miriam, my human heroine, an 11-year-old girl, discovers she can turn into water. But they're made of water. They're not creatures who live in water. They're made of water. And most of the designers I spoke to that was a hard concept until I spoke to my old friend, Brian Froud. Now, Brian Froud designed The Dark Crystal. Brian Froud designed Labyrinth, the film. In the 80s, he did beautiful books about fairies, trolls. You may be familiar. I think you would, if you saw his work, you would recognize it.
Yeah.
And he got it. And so suddenly at this point, so normally if you're going to do a TV show, you put together a pitch package and it has all your designs and your ideas and blah, blah, blah. The idea of doing this with this project that I loved so much and had spent so much of my time thinking about, I just couldn't do it just on a Zoom screen. And it was really in that moment that I decided, you know what? I'm going to write this as novels for 9 to 12-year-olds. And because then everything I wanted, then I can make it my own. I can put down what I want on the page. And did I know how to write a novel for a 9 to 12-year-old? I did not have any idea how to do that. I'd been writing screenplays.
But you do know how to collaborate.
Exactly. It's quite a different thing. And so, my first draft of the book, but basically I took the screenplay. We'd all written our first episode for when we thought it was going to be TV. And I sort of just put it down on a piece of paper. I just kind of put in she said, he said, right? But then I realized very quickly that in a screenplay, you can write Miriam turned into water. Okay. And you'll have a director, an animation director, a director of photography, and a whole bunch of people that'll help you figure out what that looks like. Yeah. When you write that sentence in a book, what does it, how does she feel? What does this mean? How is she feeling? What is she thinking? So it was a learning curve, but I recommend learning curves. I recommend vertical learning curves for staying young, I got to tell you.
I mean, you do focus on young people. You're really interested in creating for children and also presenting them with big topics. You've talked about education so far, ending war, water, climate change. How capable do you think children are of grasping such big topics?
Totally. Not only are they capable, but they're eager, I think. Because I've had the feedback I've had on book. So Waterubas book 1 is out, and it was published last year. I've had a lot of feedback from kids that have read it. It's on Amazon. I have a very small independent publisher, so it's unfortunately not available in bookstores, but I have a small independent publisher whom I know, love, and trust. So, and it means when I wanted to publish the book, he published it. And so, and the kids who've read it, I mean, what the biggest comment I get is, when's book 2? But we found this out on the Magic School Bus. A lot of my experience on that was just we did an episode once on friction, and we had a mother whose kid was 3, not even in the age group. The target audience for the Magic School Bus was sort of 7 to 11, and she said she could not believe her young kid was telling her about friction. So it's never underestimate what they understand.
So, and to take it then one step beyond that, there's grasping the concept, and then there's perhaps taking it on board, taking action, doing anything. Do you feel like, packaging up these big topics into entertainment empowers children to either immediately try and do something, make changes, or is it more of a soft approach long term that you hope sort of drip by drip, not wanting to use too much of a water pun there, it feeds into them as they grow up and become adults?
Well, in a way, it's the number 2 for this project for me, because I'm thinking, okay, so what my thinking is that, okay, 2015, the experts are telling us by 2050, half the people on the planet will not have access to clean water. Okay? And so I'm thinking, okay, so kids who are kids now will be grown-ups then. So how can my idea was make them love water so that when it's their job to steward it, it's their job to face this crisis, that they do it with love and respect rather than fear and greed. That was my big idea behind the whole thing. And also making the entertainment in the Waterubas is, again, a bit from the Magic School Bus, the idea that get kids to experience the science. You don't just tell them, it's not just facts. No way. They have to. So that's why Miriam Peterson, my heroine, she can turn into water. She can, and it's called puddling. And when she turns back into a girl, that's unpuddling. And she actually can travel, because I wanted to, it's also about stimulating the imagination too, isn't it? Wanting kids to think about what it would be like to be water. And she can travel the planet as water. So where water's everywhere. So it was not wanting just to tell kids, okay, water connects all of us. We hear this all the time. Water connects all of us. And it's, very important, and we need a right? It's to have them feel it through a story. That was what I'm hoping to do. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And absolutely. I have one final question for you, which is about the presentation of the book. Illustrated? Is it a chapter book? How digestible is it? What will kids or parents who are buying this for their kids actually get their hands on?
It's got short chapters. It's beautifully designed by a woman called Lorraine Inglis. Again, my whole thing, having an small independent publisher, I did not know there was such a thing as an interior book designer. So I found that, and the artwork was all Brian Froud. Though one of the main characters, Brad, he draws some cartoony things which you see throughout. It's 9 to 12, though I've had grown-ups enjoy reading it. So I don't think you grow out of it when you're 12. But the age, for publishing, the age group is 9 to 12. Kids who are reading, though, again, parents have been reading it, sometimes read it with their kids. So yeah, it's. I think the idea of a story, and there's bad guys, and it's adventure too. It's not. It's exciting, if I do say so myself. Wait until you see book 2. I'm really pleased with how it came, but I love hearing from people. Oh, I know what I wanted to say too. When you talk about collaboration, all the way through when I was writing book 1, I had different readers. I had readers read it all the time because I just needed help. Book 2, same thing, but this time I have some kid readers who have been reading it before it's published, giving me feedback, what they love, what they maybe little things they didn't understand. I cannot tell you. It's brilliant. Makes all the difference.
Is that a common thing in kids' book writing?
I don't know. Since I'm new, it was common to. Well, of course, on Sesame Street we always got kid input, and that was what I always found the most interesting. So
Well, it makes total sense. It sounds absolutely lovely. Jocelyn, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It's been a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you very much, Anna. Loved it. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye. So the book is called The Waterubas, and you can find it, as you heard there, on Amazon or on the Talk Radio Europe bookshop, and it's by Jocelyn Stevenson.